Good morning. How is everyone doing today? Anyone out at the midnight movie last night? Yeah, okay, same. How many cups of coffee are you gonna have today? Welcome to the Filmmaker Forum, was one of our best panels that we hold every year. My name is Joshua Martin. I sit on Documentary Selections Committee. So I just wanted to welcome you. We have a whole panel of filmmakers here. We're gonna do a quick clip reel to be able to introduce you to all of their projects if you haven't seen them yet. And we'll bring them out here and get a conversation going.
Hey, kid, what are you doing? Get your girl back in the car.
I'm getting gas so my mom can go see Jesus.
Joe, come on. Do something.
You you gotta press it harder. Like this.
Looking for something special? Well, you're in the right place. Something for a soiree? A fancy date? A funeral? Well, whatever it is. I'm your shop girl.
It is for an occasion.
Oh.
I'm looking for what I'll wear when I kill myself.
Sometimes I feel like I'm just a retired teenager, reflecting on the traps, seen too many caskets laced with football jerseys and fitted caps. Hold your head up high. Even Mark Twain will tell you the two most important days of your life is when you're born and the day you find out why. I speak to provoke purpose. It's a question of how you function best and what, if not who, were you designed to bless between birth and death dates, legacy. She's illiterate but could read the North Star, and a combination of hymns and songs at alternate speeds to indicate danger or safety. Ain't no swamp monkey enough to hold back the tracks to freedom. I could see him, whole families dependent upon Mother Moses. No staff, but a pistol and a clear path, ready to pull the trigger on any lot that would look back praying.
Please join me in a warm welcome for Orlando's Poet Laureate. Sean, welcome.
Can you imagine a DVD that teaches criminals how to break the law?
Now, the former straight-laced lawman is using his expertise to show drug users how to conceal their stash.
It's all in an outrageous DVD that he's produced called Never Get Busted Again.
He was one of the first people to make a huge public stand.
Oh, I thought he was fucking crazy. You know, I thought he was gonna get shot down.
So why in the world would you, as a former drug enforcement officer, want to help people use drugs?
We must end this war on our people.
That offended almost all law enforcement officers, and he became a target.
Hey, Rangers, why are y'all being pricks like that? You don't want me busting crooked cops?
We get into some real cloak and dagger, Breaking Bad, Ozark shit.
Barry Cooper himself is still at large.
Barry broke the code. People wanted him dead.
I was considered one of the worst traitors on the planet to law enforcement. And my response to them was, fuck you, come get some.
Son? Hey, you okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you can sleep. I'm wired.
I don't have enough money to make it to California.
There's someone who owes me. You just have to take me to him.
Where?
'Arizona. 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 'Ariz
I, I don't think that's a good idea.
He has money. I know he does. And we could use that money to get a place in California while we look for jobs.
I mean, do you really want to see him?
Yeah. I do. Paula, I think I just need a minute. Get some sleep, okay?
I didn't order this.
Oh my God.
I would love to invite the filmmakers up to join me on the stage. All right. Well, oh, yep, you're here. Yeah. Um, all right. Well, first and foremost, thank you all for being here. Welcome. Really, really appreciate you being at the festival and also taking this extra time to speak with us this morning. If you don't mind, how about we go down the line? You can introduce yourself and what project you're with, and we'll get things kicked off from there.
Hello, I'm David Anthony Go. I'm the co-creator of Never Get Busted. First of all, I just want to apologize. I didn't realize how much swearing was in our little teaser. But yeah.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Smith. I'm the writer and director of Rider Day narrative features.
Hi, I'm Nira Burstein. I'm the writer, director, editor of Dear Shop Girl, the film with the vintage clothing store.
Hi, my name is Russell Goldman. I am the writer-director of the Narrative Film Center.
Hi, my name is Christy Chan. I'm the writer and director of the narrative short Somewhere to Be.
I'm Justin Whittingham. I'm the director and director of photography of the documentary short Welcome.
Okay. We'll start out. I'll start out with some questions that are for everyone. So we'll kind of go down the line. These are pretty generic, and hopefully get some thoughts going in the audience, especially students. It would be great if you want to chime in at any point. We're gonna have a microphone set up on the side. Oh, what's that? Oh, I have all the mics. Okay, so you'll yell it, and then I'll repeat it. So very good. But let's just get started with what was the first spark that you're like, this is the project that I'm going to devote anywhere from months to years of my life. You're like, this is something that's worthwhile at this point.
So the producer Aaron Williams Weir and I saw like a really short clip with our lead subject in Never Get Busted, which is a feature documentary, and we just couldn't believe that Matthew McConaughey or Woody Harrelson hadn't played him in a narrative feature. So we became pretty obsessed, and reached out to him. And I remember the first phone call, and he said, "Yeah, I've been waiting for this call," and that's kind of started it.
Yeah, It was kind of actually, I made a short version of the film while I was in film school, and I remember like having kind of like my last or what, not my last actually, but like at the end of the school year, I was having a coffee at my with my professor at this like place we call the Hungarian pastry shop. Anyways, it was, and I was like, well, so what should I do now? And he was like, because I wasn't sure about my thesis short, and he was like, this one that I made earlier in my time, that I should really go with. And it kind of went from there, expanding that film, like short film, into a feature.
With Dear Shop Girl, which is a short, I was working on a lot of different feature projects, both narrative and documentary, and I just kind of came up with this concept very quickly. Someone said I could shoot at a vintage clothing store, and that's the story I came up with. And I put it down for a couple years to focus on features, and then it got funded, and so we made the film.
Sender also started as a short film, and that was something that I could see the concept of the movie, which was someone receiving all these things that they didn't order. I could see that was resonating even just in an 18-minute form, and the joy of actually crafting the feature film was discovering with the cast and crew how you expand that into something that like can hold an audience's attention for more than 5 times the length. So, but it was driven by the idea of obsession and perpetually ordering, and something that felt very, very much what like living today is like.
So Somewhere to Be was originally a scene I wrote in a feature film that I've been developing, and I extracted it because I felt it could hold as a short film, and it would be a good test drive of the look and feel and aesthetics that I'm thinking of for the feature film.
So with Welcome, I was born and raised here. I'm an Orlando native, and I was first exposed to, thank you. I was first exposed to Sean Welcome's poetry in my senior year of high school when I was the MLK humanitarian from my high school for the city of Orlando. And Sean keynoted our sort of awards ceremony and performed a poem at it. And I was just so taken by how he wove words together and how the entire room, you could have heard a pin drop when he was speaking. And so I was just so inspired by his spoken word poetry. The idea to make the film itself didn't really come until 4 years later, after I had gone to film school. I moved to Los Angeles and I went to Loyola Marymount University. I didn't end up doing a thesis film because I had done a cinematography capstone instead. And when I graduated, one of my friends from back here, who ended up being my producer, Josh, reached out to me and said, I would love to make whatever your next passion project is come to life. So with an offer like that, you have to come up with a great story. And I thought who it back home in Orlando had inspired me so much and left such a lasting impact on me. And Sean was the first person I thought of. And I sent him a DM about 3 years ago, and he was more than willing to be a part of it. So yeah, we spent maybe a few months shooting about 2 years ago, and then the better part of the last 2 years editing it together to premiere it here, back where I grew up, which is really full circle to me. So that's super awesome.
Like I mentioned earlier, I know that the audience is comprised of quite a few students. Would what kind of initial advice would you give to them about now that you have a movie made, and what is the process about getting it actually shown? I feel like in film school we learn a lot about how to make it, but what do we do with it once it's created and get it seen to the most amount of people? Would you be able to speak on that?
Well, that's such a big question. So like before writing and directing, I was a producer mostly in the narrative space as well. And I always think it's just about starting. I think a lot of the times as filmmakers, we sit and wait for other people to give us permission to do something. But I think if you've got a camera and you can pick it up and you can start filming whatever you're starting to film, if it's a narrative, if there's a scene that you can shoot initially as a proof of concept or a short version of it, or if it's a documentary, if you can start interviewing, I just think get started.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that sentiment. I think that what is really key when you're making a film that you should think about, like, you know how they like in film school they probably told you like the triangle quality, um quickness, price, and you can only have two of the three. I think when you go into a film, you should think about um you should think about novelty slash shock as one of the legs, aesthetics and pathos. And if you can hit like we're striving for all of them, but I think like if you can hit two of the three of those things, you've got like a pretty good film on your hands. And so I think like when you're thinking about like putting something forward, think of that. Your cast and casting and having a good casting director is the most important thing, I think, to getting your film seen and getting it to a good premiere and a good reach. Because it makes you want to spend time with those characters and makes it feel real. So spending time casting, meeting actresses or actors is like definitely key. And then I would say the last thing, if your producer gives you a choice when it comes to the feature, between days and people, always choose days over people. More days, less people.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. I have two thoughts. One is, who is your audience besides, yourself? It's, when you're sending it out to festivals or trying to get it sold, like, they're your audience first, and they're going to want to be like, well, do I want to see this movie? And it's fine if it's a passion project for yourself, but if you want to get it out there, you have to know who your audience is. And secondly, network, just meet people, email people, go to things, apply for grants, because that gets you in the industry. Even if you don't, get into that festival, now they know your name and you're building a network.
To piggyback off of that, I think knowing the potential future audience of your project is super important. I also think that you are your first audience for what you're making, and the people that you're making it with, the small community, whether it's a shorter feature, it's likely a group of very small devoted people, are going to be the first people to recognize it and see it and be on your wavelength about what you're trying to make. And I think you want to make something that I think it's underspoken how long even a short film can take to actually come to fruition, and actually until it comes out into the world, until it comes to a festival like this one. This is something that you have to love. Like fundamentally, you have to love it, and you have to love the people that you're making it with. It won't always be the easiest time, but you have to trust them, and you have to be so excited by what they're bringing to the table, because this is a collaborative medium, and I think that you will want to surprise and excite yourself and challenge yourself in your own understanding of what was the kernel in this that you had not seen in the world before, that you want to see in the world now. And that I think if you share it with your crew, the likelihood of that translating to an audience like this one or festivals around the world is pretty high.
Really beautifully said. I agree with what everyone's mentioned. I think about sustainability and longevity as an artist a lot. I've been practicing as a visual artist and filmmaker for almost 27 years. And for me, one of the mantras that sustain me is this notion of inside out. I start from the inside out. Even if I'm hearing no's on a project, no's on funding, I try to hear my own yes louder. I try to hear the yes voice louder. And I try to work from the inside out, in that I try to surround myself with people in community who believe in my work. And I worry about the peripheral a little less. And so I find that when I work from the inside out and stay true to my vision, that can sort of carry myself and my collaborators and my teammates through any challenges that we have, so long as I, as the director, am clear on what we're trying to do and really, really believe in it. Like, not just like kind of believe in it, but really, really believe in it, and hear the yes in yourself on what you want to make.
Yeah, that's great. Gosh, such good insight coming down the line. I think I'll double down on something Nira mentioned, which is know who your film is for. Because for me, it becomes your North Star. My North Star kind of for this film was I wanted to honor the community here in Orlando, particularly in the spoken word scene. And there was a lot of ways that I could do that through making the film about Sean. But at sort of every turn, when I was split on what decision to make, or how do I want to tell a certain part of the narrative, or do I spend time here or move on, I kind of filtered it through who am I making this film for, and what do I want them to be able to experience emotionally? What sort of callbacks to what Orlando was like in the mid 2000s is something that like they might appreciate or recognize, or what is something that Sean mentions in his own personal story that people will just relate to. So I think I definitely agree with like centering your audience in your mind is how a lot of those decisions about what people are going to eventually enjoy fall into place. Um, the second thing I would add is give yourself time. I remember really specifically, I wanted our film to be done a year before it ended up being done, and my producer Joshua gave me some of the most sage advice that I needed at the time, which was if you're giving yourself a deadline, the film will be so much better than you can currently imagine it in another year. And I know sometimes you can't wait another year, but sort of against my will, I sort of had to give in to, you know what? I'm just going to trust the process. I'm going to let this editing process take another year. I'm going to spend all that time with my editor and post really honing in on the story. And the film is night and day for the extra year we gave it. And so that won't be a universal case across the board, but I will most certainly say that time can only make your film better. It won't make it worse.
To circle back to that, to this kind of vaguely connected, to speak about the edit. I'm not a filmmaker. I've been a programmer for almost 20 years, so I watch hundreds and hundreds of movies every year for the festival, in various categories. And probably our biggest universal criticism all the time is always, this could have been a little tighter. This could have been a little shorter. And of all the films represented here are all very, very tight. They're all really good films where not more isn't shown than needs to be. And I'm curious if you can kind of speak on that, how you're able to separate, like I'm sure there are things that you just absolutely wanted that you just can't hold on to for various reasons, be them because an editor maybe told you that you need to cut it or just financial reasons, whatever. Can you speak on how you're able to grapple with that and if it made your project better, or if you feel like if you could go back you would change something?
So with our feature doc, it actually originally started as a four-part series, and so we cut a four-part series with an editor named Julian Hart, who's Emmy nominated for Tinder Swindler. He did Drive to Survive. He did Don't F with Cats. Like he's one of the best documentary editors in the world. And I used to be an editor, so I did like the first cut of the pilot episode basically by myself. Well, unfortunately, the producer had to assist me, which he wasn't very happy with. And I got it to a certain point where the story was really working. And then when Julian came in and that collaboration started, he really kind of added this extra energy to it. But I do remember really late in the process, once we kind of had it all together and we were pretty happy with it, there was something in the start that felt like it was lagging, and it just felt like it was quickly cut. It was kind of getting where it needed to be, but at the same time, it felt like you wanted to get to where the guts of the story is quicker, and you couldn't speed up the edit anymore, and for it to still work and make sense. And then I realized really late in the process, I'm like, well, this is a story about a cop breaking bad, but what we're currently telling is almost a biography at the start. This guy grows up, then he decides he's going to become a police officer, then he kind of breaks bad. And you realize that nobody cares about that start. Okay, people care about, let's meet him as a cop and then have that turn as soon as possible, because then you're on the ride and you can reveal things about his character and how he became the way he was throughout the rest of the film. So that was a really late change to cut out a 10-minute sequence that I loved. It was so funny, it was so fun, but ultimately the story and the drive of the story has to be really, really on point. And I think you have to have that discipline to, as they say, like kill your darlings. And so that was like a change that we made. And as soon as we did it, I'm like, now it flies. Now it really, really works.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about the Genesis of Paradise. So we shot in like like I guess like mostly September of 2024, and from like, you know, soon as I got back, I edited with my editor Olivia until about like December, and just like, you know, trying to figure out like what's wrong with it, this and that. We did like, you know, an audience tests in that time as well, and we got feedback. You should always do that as well, and like give a survey, because it tells you who your audience is, and then something that, you know, you're like, you know, that's a ridiculous thing for someone to say, it might come back and resonate later. So we were doing that, and then by December we got into Tribeca, so then we had to like really rush, or like try to finish the film because we needed to deliver it in advance of the festival. And so, but there still was something that wasn't working. So me and my co-writer Alicia, we started editing ourselves. Just because it's like, it's way better. It's like you have an idea in the middle of the night, just go edit it. It's not like I have to like drive to my editor's house, then we do it the next day. It's like instantaneous in the moment, trying a lot of things. So then we probably like edit it from like December to March, and you know, we cut a lot of things. Anything that we found that, like, you know, our two leads, Brianna Middleton and Stella Everett, are who the audience wants to stay with, and when their interludes with side characters didn't really land, and it's just like, we want to stay with who we want to stay with for this film. So that was like a big chunk. Anything that's bad acting, cut it. Anything, or just like that will bump you, cut it. You have to really have an eye for that, even if it's like, well, for the story to work, it's kind of like, it's better just cut it. Even if the acting is bad, quite honestly. But we had this problem at the end of the film. We turned it over. We thought we finished the film. I asked the executive producers, like, we were contractually obligated to have a 90 to 110-minute movie. I asked if it could be not that, because it's about 85. And they were like, sure. And sent it over to sound turnovers. And there was just something like, I think I got like I don't know. It had like a weird conversation with like a publicist, and it was like bothering me all week. And then I paid to unlock the film from sound, and I was like, there's something that the beginning of the film didn't feel exactly correct, and it wasn't holding the tension, because it's like a thriller genre film, and you need to tell people instruct them in what they're watching. Like, I think I wrote it as a discovery of what you're watching, but I think it's really imperative to instruct the audience. Then I was like, ugh, I had to kill Bill it. So it's like you start at the end, just to hold the tension for about 18 minutes till we get to our first like thriller moment, basically, and then it can build from there. So something to also think about, like, when editing a feature, is like how you're holding tension through that whole process, and how you're instructing the audience in watching the film that you're presenting. Sorry that was long-winded, but yeah.
To piggyback on the feedback, I think it's very important, if you're sending your film or having screenings, that part of that audience is people that don't work in the industry. Have like random people that haven't read the script, they don't have any inside knowledge, that can just really ask maybe even stupid questions, that you know the film so well, you're the filmmaker, that it's very obvious. And it's very incredible, like, to just know that before you start submitting it places. And secondly, I wrote, directed, and edited Dear Shop Girl, and I highly recommend not doing that. Like, I am an editor too, just for other films and stuff, But what I love to do, kind of like what you did, I think it sounds like, is that take over the edit later. Like have someone else put that initial edit together so you can see the forest for the trees a little bit, because narrative editing more than documentary editing is so continuity based. Like the arm is here, now it's over there. You can't edit those together. So just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, so editing Sender was that was a 5 month experience, basically like 5 or 6 days a week, of me being by my editor's side after he had completed an assembly. And I think the two biggest things that I would stress that really did help me, echoing sharing the movie with people. I think that there's a very pivotal test screening that we had about like 3 months into that process where we discovered that the associative editing, like whether people were in the industry or not, like it was resonating and we were onto something. And it's you just know, like as a filmmaker, you don't know fully what isn't working until you can watch it with a group of people. That group of people is not the be all end all, but they are like more objective than you can be about the project at that moment in time, because they were just watching something and resonating with it in real time and trying to understand it in real time. And you know the context and you know what the intention is, and they don't have to. They're not necessarily in your brain. And the other piece is that I think I was saying this to somebody after the screening last night. I would highly recommend, even if you're not the lead editor, you should certainly at the very least collaborate with an editor on whether a short or a feature or anything. You should know the program that your editor is using. You should be able to understand the language of it. If you want to try out something yourself and bring it back into the editing room, so long as you have that rapport with the editor and you're not stepping on toes, that is a really great way to intuitively say like, hey, why don't we try it in this direction? And it's a really helpful way, especially if you're a small project and you only have so many resources, to put everything you can towards just creating the movie that is the closest to the experience that you want in your head.
So I was also one of the main editors on my film, and I would echo Nira's sentiment that I think on my next one, I would maybe play with the order of when I came in. But that said, the whole time I was making the film, I couldn't wait to edit it, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on it after the shoot. So it felt like a natural instinct to do the first few passes. I would say that what helped me in terms of being both the editor and director was that I tried to separate those two hats. So the fact that I was on set and directing the shoot and I know which shots were so difficult to get. There was a couple of shots where like we were dealing with a forest fire and like a calamity happened and this happened and that happened. And the crew worked so hard to get that shot. And what a shame it would be to not put that shot in. But when I have my editor hat on and not the director hat, and I don't need that shot, I just get rid of it. And so I think there's a switching of hats that needs to happen if you are the editor on the film that you directed. And that does help keep it lean. And I'll echo what everyone on the panel has said, that showing it to people is really great because then you're seeing it through their eyes, and showing it to people who are, for me, it was showing it to a combination of fellow filmmakers I trust, and also people who are just good viewers who are not necessarily filmmakers. It's a real gift to have that experience of watching it with them.
No, yeah, I totally agree with everyone's insights. I did not edit the film, and I cannot speak enough to separating those two hats. I cannot sing enough praises of my editor, Max Carmona, former classmate and personal friend out in Los Angeles. Max, I always say I can edit, but Max can edit. So having him on the project it's night and day from what it would have been otherwise. And I think we had a really collaborative relationship, and one of our guiding principles was a piece of advice we got very early on, which is when you're creating a film, every minute of it has to earn its runtime, especially when you would like to get into a festival such as this one. So with a documentary film, when we're really finding the story in post-production, our main goal is how are we being economical with every sort of minute of the film. And once we found the story and got through a couple of rough cuts, we started viewing the film through the lens of two things. One is what does the audience need to know, right? What informationally from Sean's personal story gives the audience the context to move through the story with us. And the second being, what does the audience need to feel? If there's something that Sean goes through and we want the audience to be able to resonate with that, so that we have this emotional payoff in the end where he gets to the culmination of his career, what do we need to make you feel early? What of Sean's wants and needs do we establish in the first minute of the film, in the fourth minute of the film, in the eighth minute of the film? So when we started looking at the film through the lens of those two things, it's suddenly a whole lot easier to realize what we don't need. And we, of course, went through the kill your darlings process, but it was less of killing our darlings and more just being like, I want to give the audience exactly what they need, not a second more. And I'm very proud of the film. Like, I won't, of course, brag. One of the things I'm proudest of is every time I watch the film, I feel like it's the exact perfect length. Like, I don't think it would have been any better if it was a second shorter or a second longer. So I really appreciate that question, because that's something that's hard as a filmmaker to find, and that we were lucky enough to.
I can throw it out to the audience. Does anybody out there have any questions? Yeah, right here, sir. Yeah, let's try to speak up a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it helps with the shorthand, honestly. And this is entirely my own experience and prerogative. It was like a norm. I have worked with the same editor on 3 shorts, including the one that inspired my future, before I made the feature film with him. And we both came up learning Premiere Pro, and that was exceptionally helpful as far as auditioning things on my end, or even just trying, because I think another something, I mean, it's especially gargantuan with the feature film, but like being acutely aware as a filmmaker of like every little morsel of footage you do have, every variance on a take that you do have, every way that you can construct something is really valuable. There are ways to do that where you don't have that software. I find it a lot easier if you can, at the very least, mark and highlight things that are resonating with you, specific timestamps within a program. And compared to a lot of other elements of filmmaking, a subscription to Premiere Pro is fairly reasonable compared to the cost of actually putting even a short film together. And it lets you do so much. It really kind of lets you like try everything, and my film like really needed a like we tried everything possible in the edit. And that was really invigorating and exciting. I think it's the most accessible one in some ways, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started editing, it was, Final Cut Pro, like back in the day. And then it depends on what you're working on. I find like you've got to work with what the editor wants to work with. So we first started cutting on Premiere, but our editor was an Avid editor. So we had to transfer everything over to that. Now, I suck at Avid. Like, I'm terrible at it. I'm incredibly slow. I can't really operate it too well. It's very, very frustrating to me because I'm used to Final Cut Pro essentially is similar to how Premiere Pro operates. So I was very used to that kind of ecosystem. But like I do think, to your point before, I don't necessarily think that you have to know the software, inside and out. But I do think you need to be able to speak the language of editing. And it's the same across the board with anyone you're collaborating with. I don't think it's good enough as a director not to have a fundamental understanding of cameras, of editing, of sound, of all of those things, because you are communicating with people and providing direction to people that need to be able to apply that to the craft and skill and art that they bring to a project.
All right. Yeah.
Real
right up here
quick,
in
sorry.
front.
I just wanted to
Oh,
add
sorry,
to
sorry.
that.
I'm sorry, Justin.
Just because, so I've also used everything. I identify as more of a DaVinci Resolve user, if you're familiar with that software, because I'm a colorist, like, by trade as well, so that has a lot of color grading features in it. But I've spent my time in Premiere Pro as well. I've tried Avid, and honestly, the best software for your film is the one that your editor uses. So I definitely agree with the sentiment of having a fundamental understanding of editing and how those softwares work.
Yeah. Sorry to get into the editing stuff, but when you talk about killing your darlings, how do you avoid actually killing one of your characters to edit the scene out that kind of explains the arc or anything like that? Especially in Russell, where you have a lot of work. If you had cut one line, it would really affect the understanding of the character.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think just to briefly answer, and others can chime in. Yeah, it's very. I think it is very intuitive. Honestly, it's very much like these are characters that have stayed with you both on the page and also what your actors brought to it, what you discovered with them. There's the element, of course, of like what you would be sad to miss, but as we've discussed here, like sometimes that isn't necessary. There is a character in Sender that was fully cut out. It wasn't the biggest character, but it was not serving the momentum of the story, and it was not giving us more insight into Britt's character. It was information that we already knew, and if anything, it was taking us out of this very specific headspace that we wanted the movie to be in. It almost made it feel too conventional. So I think that, and it was a risk because there was like quote unquote plot information that we would have missed, but it didn't have anything to do with the packages. It was kind of separate, and that came relatively late in the process because it kind of took my team and myself to kind of challenge our own imagination of like, just like thinking for a second, what would this look like if we didn't have this person in the movie, or this character? It had nothing to do with the performance. The performance was lovely. It's just what the movie is asking for. There's a phrase that Elaine May used called what is within the ecology of the movie, that I really adore. And I think every moment in a cut, every choice that you make in every step of the process really lends itself to like what is in the ecology of it. It's very intuitive, I think.
I would also just add that sometimes what you leave out is as important as what you put in, because sometimes you do want a little bit of mystery, and I often want to trust that the audience is going to have some dots to connect. So if something isn't critical to understanding the narrative of the story, if it's more about something that can be left unsaid, it's actually kind of nice to leave some things unsaid.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, going back to like actually what a lot of people have said, like test screenings are awesome. I mean, they're painful. They're incredibly painful to do. But I think like when you are a filmmaker sitting in, particularly with people who aren't filmmakers, you become an audience member again. It suddenly becomes fresh to you. And if you're sitting there feeling this tension of like, I need to explain something to people, or like this is lagging here, or that's not working, then you know there's a problem that you have to solve. The audience doesn't know how to solve that for you. They may say, oh, I got like a little bit bored in the middle, right? That might not be a problem with the middle. That might be a problem with your setup. It's up to you to be able to solve it. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer in doing as many as you can throughout the editing process.
Yeah, sir, we can go with you right here.
How did you pick your DP, and what was your expectation for them for pre-production and production?
The question is, how did they pick their DP and what were their expectations?
I mean, you know, I'd say in documentary, like I think in narrative, like your DP is like really, you know, one of the most quintessential choices that you make. I would say for documentary, it's really the editor. I think the editor is the most key kind of collaborator, story person that you're working with, probably outside of the producer. But for us, it came down to like ours is like largely what we film is, you know, interview based. So we kind of had like a really kind of specific look that we were after, and it became down to like people we'd worked with before. We needed them to also have the right temperament for it, and that was really important because we're dealing with, you know, sensitive subjects. We're dealing with corrupt police officers. We're dealing with like, you know, also some dangerous stuff, and we needed someone who would kind of vanish on the set, kind of like help make the camera disappear, so that for a subject, they no longer think about, oh, I've got all this like filmmaking around me and I'm super aware that I'm being filmed right now. They have to feel like I'm just having a conversation. And so for us, that came down to both the skills and talent of the cinematographer, which we had a few, but also temperament was a big, big thing.
Should we go down the line? Alright. You know, you go through an interview process with your DPs. I think what's really challenging on narrative, it's like, and I think what's something that I found challenging and something that I definitely like learned from during this process, it's like you do all these interviews, you think you pick someone, but it's also like if you don't have all your funding there, you kind of set a boundary. You don't want to monopolize someone's time for a project that, like, you know, won't find its money or won't go forward. It was really crazy. Our DP Lee, she left like a really like, I don't know, some silly holiday movie and made the gaffer finish shooting it to come prep our movie because when we got the funding to do it. So like, you don't want, especially in the space narrative, it's like you don't want to lock someone that you love, you know, out of a job and a livelihood because it's really hard. But yeah, it's hard to just find. It's just hard to just find that balance and like of when to like when you're full force into it and when you're like sending each other things I like and then to when you're actually like, you know, shot listing. I think it's very hard on narrative because it's like the expectation is everyone's being paid for their time.
So the DP of Dear Shop Girl was Lisa Rinsler, and she's been around a long time. She was the DP of Minutes to Society, Pollock, like really beautiful films. And we worked before on my doc feature, Charm Circle. She shot a little with me on that, though I shot most of that. And you know, especially if you're working with someone you haven't before, is like talk to them, like see how you communicate, you know. Do you also have the language of DP and how they talk to their department? Like get to know as much as you can, because they, just like editing, the camera department, lighting department have their own language too. Like it's very, very specific, and on set you have to move so quick. Also, when trying to find a DP, like if you don't know them personally, you know, talk to people that work with them too, and that experience. Some DPs work fast and some work slow. And you have to know, like, with your budget, what's really feasible to get what you want.
Yeah, I think that when people just like describe like meeting an actor for the first time on a project and like instantly kind of feeling that rapport and understanding, like I think you really want that with your DP, you want that with your production designer, you want that with your editor, you want that with really every department head possible, because the DP is going to, as much as anything, dictate the temperament of your set, how fast you're able to move. If you two share a common like down to the minutia, a really common understanding of like exactly where the frame is, because them putting up a different frame than you want is going to cost time, and that's going to cost money. And you have to really put your faith in somebody. I think with Gemma Dahl Grossman, who shot Sender and did an incredible job, I thought. She challenged my own understanding of my film and proposed in some ways a better one than I could have hoped for if I were to have shot it myself, which I would have absolutely no idea how to do. But her approach to color and to lighting and what she lent to this project was what makes it feel special to me. So I think you are looking for artists that inspire you the same way that you look for an actor that inspires you.
The DP on my shirt was Mario Furloni, who's incredibly talented cinematographer. And it was actually our first time working together. But how I found him was my former DP, who I'd worked with for years and years, was not going to be able to be the DP on this film, and he recommended Mario based on what he knew about how I like to work. And what worked out well, just to echo what a lot of people are saying on this table, is we had a great rapport. We wanted the same things, and before we decided to work together, we asked each other questions about how do you like to work, and we both like to work. Speed is a thing. We both like to do a lot of pre-production. Mario has a background in documentary filmmaking, so he's used to moving quickly, finding shots quickly, and doing a lot of pre-production. So with our relationship, we discovered we liked to work the same way. Our temperaments were a good fit. I know for myself that I like to work with really calm people, that even if we're moving very, very incredibly fast on set, that the vibe feels calm, the vibe feels safe, the vibe feels like a nice container for everyone to work in and do their best work. And the relationship between the director and the DP really is the core of how the vibe will be on set. Having the right person in that role really is such a gift. And I'll say for me and Mario, when we were doing a lot of the planning ahead of time and we figured out how every shot was going to look and down to every minutia detail, that allowed us to move quickly. So what could have been a 3-day shoot was actually a 2-day shoot for us.
So for my short film, I actually was the DP as well. And that was not because, like, I'm a DP by trade. I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna do everything myself, because that's not how you should approach filmmaking. But as someone who's primarily a DP, I mostly direct by happenstance. Like when I find a story that I think is so uniquely representative of me and that I'm so passionate about, that I feel like I need to direct it as well as shooting it. So I really approach Welcome from the DP perspective of like, what is, like, how do I visually want to render story? But as a DP also, like, I can sort of speak to the two things being really important there, being for documentaries especially, how does your DP see the world? I think when you're talking to them and trying to figure out if they're right for your project, a lot of it is in figuring out what's important to them. And a lot of my decisions were made based on where do I think when I'm with this person, where am I going to put the camera? Am I going to want to be close to them? Or am I going to want to be farther away and see the space more? And that's not something you can always figure out by talking to them, but through references and like coming up with a shot list, however much you stick to it in a documentary, it's good to understand how they think and if that vision is going to lend well to your film. The other unique thing about documentaries, especially with the verite sort of being in person in the moment with the subject, that a lot of our film is, oftentimes as a DP, I'm the closest one to the subject, not the director. And in those situations, it's really important to know how your DP interacts with people. Like, can they also be a safe space for your documentary subject, such that you don't have to worry about, are they just going to be technical? Are they going to be focused on the story and not the feelings of this real human being that we're in an intimate space with? I like to be the kind of DP that my directors can sort of trust, like, hey, I'm just going to stay 20 feet away and look at frame, I'm just gonna let you be with this person. I want them to get comfortable with you. I want them to start forgetting you're there behind the camera. Um, yeah, I don't know if you're asking about documentary as well, but I can say for documentary, one of the most important things is having a DP that your subject can have comfort with, as much as, if not honestly, more than they have.
I have a question that's geared mostly towards the short filmmakers, but feature filmmakers, feel free to chime in if you have an opinion on the matter. Um, can you talk on the varying ways that you can roll out short films now, especially with social media? I see that, a lot of filmmakers obviously wait until an end of a festival run before they put it up on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever. But I've also seen some short filmmakers decide to try to monetize it by putting it on Amazon Prime before it's done a proper run. Can you kind of talk on the pros and cons of those things and why you stand where you do?
So I think this sort of question goes back to, well, what is ultimately your goal with your film? Like what would be success to you? Is it trying to make money? Because I'm telling you with a short, you're probably not. And you're probably not going to make your investors' monies back. And you should be very honest about that. You know, in some ways, I think it's still true that shorts are calling cards, and and you want to present the industry so you can make, longer feature projects. Some people are not that way. But the landscape right now, as some of you might have heard, is really just very challenging. Like festivals are getting thousands and thousands of submissions, especially of shorts, every year. And it's just, you really have to figure out how to stand apart. And if you know how to use social media, or you know how to use YouTube or anything like that, like that's more important than necessarily making your money back right now with a short. Because if you can go to a distributor later and be like, look, I have an audience, you can show them those numbers. That does mean something.
So I recently came back from screening my short in several European festivals, and it was interesting to see how different the model there is, because there's a lot of funding for shorts filmmakers, and a large majority of shorts do get distribution, and the shorts filmmakers I spoke to expected to get distribution. And oftentimes they already have a distributor when they're playing in festivals, and it's their distributor that is managing the logistics of screening in festivals. And that's a very different system, right? Our arts and culture has a different funding there. In contrast, as Nara mentioned, we have a lot of shorts being made here, and not necessarily very clear, probably paraphrasing what you said, but not necessarily these very clear historic distribution channels. I think in the case of Somewhere to Be, we are looking to keep building the audience through festival screenings, and hopefully at some point having some options and being able to show, like, look at the audience that's already been built for this. And we would also consider looking into educational distribution, since our feature, it's not the feature, since our short features topics including immigration, racism, childhood development. So, I look at it like, yeah, there's no clear path, but we also have agency in how we build an audience. So this is why it's so great to be screening at places like the Florida Film Festival, is to share the film with audiences.
I just want to add that when she says funding, she means like governmental funding, most likely, and that means you don't have to pay that back. Just like, our country is different from a lot of countries, in that, like healthcare, like arts is not considered, something that is a part of making your culture better, and they feel that way.
Yeah, I wish I had more to add, because I don't know is the true answer. This is my first film festival. That, like, I've been to a few teen film festivals when I was growing up, but this being the world premiere of Welcome, this is my first film festival ever, and hopefully we get into more in the coming months. But I just want to answer, like, because I know we have students here, like, I'm 24, like, I'm very new to this. And like Nira kind of mentioned, like one of the things, especially when you're early in your career, that's important about making shorts because you're not going to make your money back, is showing the world what you will do when you give your care to something. And I think that's the biggest thing I wanted to do with Welcome, especially given that Orlando is a community I care about. And Sean's story is one we can share with other communities as well through film festivals and things like that. So I'm taking notes when talking, when Christy's talking, because I don't know what we're doing about distribution and things like that. Hopefully we figure something out. But yeah, I just wanted to say that as being someone who honestly like doesn't know the ins and outs, just doing your best and being driven by having a film that's for people, I think everyone will appreciate that when your film's in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah, right here in front, sir. Yep.
I was just wondering, you talk about starting being such an important thing. There's always more to learn, I suppose, like whether you're watching other people's work or looking for information in certain places. I guess my question is, as artists, do you have something that you found that you keep as inspiration, like that's your style that you lean on, or are you constantly learning new things? Like, I think there's a trap for myself, and maybe other people can relate of like, well, the more I learn, the better prepared I'll be better, But at a certain point, it's like, this is who I am as an artist. That like now in this moment, I have to make this thing now. So this is kind of like a wordy way around like, do you have one thing that you found, whether it's a book or an artist that you keep coming back to, or are you just constantly taking in new things and changing them? If you have one thing.
Yeah, I remember getting someone gave me this book called The War of Art, which is largely for writers. It's supposed to be about for writers, but really what it's about is how you overcome resistance and how you stop wasting time. Because you can come up with a million excuses not to make a film. Oh, I don't have the funding. Oh, I don't think it'll work. Oh, the story's just not ready yet. But I think that that's just procrastination, and we do it all the time. So I think it's always better to make something, make crap, like make something bad. That's okay, because everything you make, you are learning from, and you're getting better and better. Some people call it the taste gap between like the films that you love and your ability to make films like it. And so the more that you do it, that gap becomes less and less and less and less until eventually you're, watching something you've made with a team and you go, actually, that's like not bad. And so you're never going to get there though if you're not okay with making a lot of mistakes and making bad things for quite a long time.
Yeah, I think also it's really important to look at this information is not always super available, but to look at other films at or around your budget for what you're going to like in the feature world for what you're about to embark on. Um, and it's sort of like I said, that paradigm of shock novelty at one end, aesthetics at another, and pathos at the other. Um, Very early on in your career, it's hard to get to that, get to probably the aesthetic level that you want to because you need quite a lot of money to do so. Like a filmmaker that, for example, is like shock and aesthetics but no pathos is sort of like a Yorgos type of film. Like very strong aesthetics, like you'll definitely see something shocking. Um, but it's so it's such like a visual pleasure that it doesn't necessarily need to tap into the pathos because it's a visual pleasure to look at. But if you're early on in your filmmaking, you do definitely need to tap into that pathos element because you probably don't have quite the aesthetic to keep it rolling like at such a high level. That's sort of how I think about filmmaking. Yeah, when you first start. But yes, I really like what you said about the gap between your tastes. and like what you actually can do. It's cool.
I think that being an artist and trying to be in an industry can often be very contradictory. Um, and when it comes to, figuring out your own voice, just allow yourself to be like alone with your ideas and find your intuition. People have told me that I have a style. I could not point it out to you. I wouldn't know what that is. But it's probably there for some people. I don't know. I think learning is happening, inspiration is happening like all the time. You just got to be open to it and like have something to write that thought down, because then it will go away. Um, and just like, musical artists, people get mad, when Bob Dylan, like, went rock, but like do it. Like if you're feeling you're going to change, your style, or my personal goal is to go and make a film of every genre. So I just want to keep learning. I don't want to like just do one thing.
Yeah, I would almost challenge the idea of like, well, what if I don't know enough? I think what you don't know is a wonderful thing, especially when you're making early work. What I didn't this the Center is my first feature. What I did not know about the process of how it would feel, I was as prepared as I possibly thought I could be. There is so much about that experience that your body will just not know or be ready for until you do it. And it is like I think the challenge almost is like, as you keep making work, how do you keep that self fear? Because that is going to be a very powerful motivator as far as how you check in with yourself. If you know how hard something is because you've now done it, are you going to push yourself the way that you would want to as an artist? Would you already start to kind of mitigate and make concessions and try to make things easier? It's a real push and pull, but there is a real wonder and beauty to like being very clear-eyed in a vision and starting out in your early work and having the right support system to like help realize it the best way that you want to, or better than you would have on your own. Because I think being afraid is a very valuable tool for a filmmaker. And it's not being afraid of necessarily even the reaction to it or the like certain kind of like final elements of the movie. It's being afraid of like, oh, like what is it gonna feel like to run a set for the first time for a feature film? And that is you need that initial like, oh my God, before you settle into the like, I can do this, I know what I'm doing. And that's a very exciting thing to discover.
I'm really loving all these comments because so many of them are resonating with me. I especially also agree that just making a lot of work and not worrying about if it's good or not is really important, because that part is about the relationship between you and the work. And making a lot of work that's simply for yourself, I think, is really important. Films take a really long time. They take years. And so one of the things I've done as part of my visual art practice, since I do both, is I make sure I have some things I'm doing that can be made fairly quickly. So I have, for example, part of my visual art is making collages. So sometimes I'll make like a collage a day because it feels satisfying to make something that can be finished in the same day. And a lot of that stuff never gets shown, but in some indirect way, I feel that everything you do on a day-to-day basis, just part of having a creative ritual, does eventually feed into what becomes your aesthetic in the long term. I see, for my own work, I end up seeing parallels of things I've made. And recently I was cleaning out my garage and I found a painting I made 26 years ago, and it was the exact shot that is in my short film, the exact shot. And it just almost spooked me. I was like, well, that's strange. So I think a little bit of it is having faith that whatever you are doing as your creative ritual is good, is fine. And it doesn't have to look like anyone else's creative ritual, but just to keep doing, keep making. It's like keeping the blood flowing through it's like keeping the blood circulating in your brain, right? But great question.
Yeah, I love the question as well, and the insights that my fellow panelists have shared. I think for me as a DP, a lot of my style, even as a director, comes from other DPs because I love how certain people like visually render the world and storytelling, and that to me is like as much storytelling as a director does. So, I mean, some of my biggest influences are like Autumn Gerald Arkapaw, who just won the Oscar for Best Cinematography. Her work on Black Panther Wakanda Forever and Sinners last year, I mean, is absolutely like drives the way I want to see the world. And other people like Greg Fraser, of course, from the Dune films, The Batman, etc. Um, but mostly, I would agree with what Nira said about how like style takes time. Like I feel like I almost wanted a style for so long, but you can't force that into your work. You can't like see an inspiration and say, okay, I'm gonna do that. Um, it takes years and years of like iteration and working on films for yourself, for it to slowly develop. And my dad, who's here, said to me a couple days ago, like when he saw a film that I shot recently, he was like, "Yeah, that felt like you. That felt like your style." And I don't even know how to explain that, but over time, it sort of grows, like your sort of eye for story and how you share things with the world. Um, so yeah, I remember being really frustrated making Welcome at certain points because I was like, why does this just not feel like up to what I'm capable of? And then I have to remember that I shot Welcome 2.5 years ago, and I've done so much in the last 2.5 years that have shaped like my style. But at the same time, that was informed by what I did on Welcome. So I was constantly growing as a filmmaker to the point where I couldn't even appreciate my own growth because like why is it interconnecting so much and I'm not just always where I want to be. So I absolutely agree with like not being hard on yourself and honestly not expecting yourself to have a style. Just like staying versatile, I think. But it will emerge whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, and the young woman here in the couch in the center here. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think you are your first audience. Like, you know, what you like, you know, what you're into, what your taste is like the initial driver. And then I think you've got to think about the particular story that you are telling, where that fits within the gamut of film. And I like to think of genres as emotions. So to me, it's like if you're making a horror, you know, does it scare people? If you're making a drama, does it make people feel something? If you're making a comedy, do they laugh? So I always try and think about in each moment like how it is working for the audience and whether it is hitting them in that way. And that's more of a micro level than like a macro level of like what your audience is. But I really think if you follow the emotions of every part of your film, then you're sort of answering that anyway. I think marketing people can come along later and say, well, your audience is this demographic and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's necessarily how you need to approach it from the filmmaking side, from the kind of inside out part of filmmaking. But it is always important to think about how does this resonate with other people? Does it work? Does it, you know, if you're doing a romantic comedy, is it working for that kind of audience that goes and watches those sort of things?
I'm sure a lot of people who are you want to do this or you want to be a filmmaker is because you're seeing a lack of something, or at least it's like why like I got into it because it's like you're making things that it's like you wish you could see, um, and so I think like that's totally fine to just start there. I think that what you should always look for is like how you can make things like fresh and new once you kind of have like this is what I want to see, this is what I want to put into the world. Double check if anyone's done exactly this and definitely steal from them, but also figure out ways to make it your own as well. Um, yeah.
Anybody else want to expound on that?
Make stuff that you think would rile your friends up. Genuinely. Especially if you're studying film at school, because you're going to gravitate towards people that may have a shared taste with you or shared uh, the kinds of films that they respond to the most. Um, because I feel like there are movies that like everybody likes, and then there are movies that like you and your friends like, and I think that is like a very exciting place to start from. Of like, if I could do a version of this kind of thing that like we've kind of seen done, but like haven't really seen done, you know that there will be like a world for it, and people will discover it. And the the movies that people bring up when they talk about my film are like so kind of different and obscure, and I find that really wonderful, because there is like a vocabulary that it does feel like it's tapping into that I don't even fully realize. But yes, make stuff with your friends and make stuff to excite them.
The gentleman in the glasses there. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You. Yep. They're wearing like a hoodie or something.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, sorry. I was wondering, I'm going to bounce off some things, Jocelyn, you said at the start. You said one of the things you thought was the most important was your casting director. And I was wondering how much you, like, give power to, the casting director's opinion versus your own. And then also kind of tapping into the distribution part. Is there any, like, strategy with your casting to thinking later, like, oh, this person has a more impressive resume, they could help with distribution or been in different festivals, and this, yeah, for anyone, but, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think your casting director has to have really good taste. And my casting director, Lois Drafkin, I love her. She sent me on meetings with actresses for the leads. I have like a notebook full of notes. And I probably met like for the leads like 35 actresses. Brianna, Brianna didn't read for me, but I just really liked her, and she was she got her start in George Clooney's movie, like The Tinder Bar, and then she was right after that in the A24 Apple TV film Sharper, and she's about to be in Apple TV's new show Neuromancer that comes out in the fall, so she has some run on her. So she didn't read for me, but Stella, she was one of the ones who read for me, and she was fresh fresh out of Juilliard. And I went to their like showcase, and I watched like episode of TV she was in, short film, and she read for me, and I was really struck between her and another actress. And at the time, like, I had these other producers, and they're like, you need to pick this actress because of this TV show. But like, honestly, like, they're about like in this age group, I don't know, there are like maybe 5 actors that matter as far as like both funding and distribution. And I think making your first film, you're all kind of gonna be at the correct level and the same level, unless you have some like amazing like executive producer, honestly, who's gonna come in early and really dictate what that cast's gonna be and make the budget at a schedule that's going to attract that sort of talent. So not to be overly technical, but I watched for also the other roles in the film. I watched my casting director filter through like maybe like, let's say she filtered through like 400 tapes, and then I watched like 60, and then we talked about it. And I think her and my lead producer, we were always like, let's make the cool choice, let's make the artistic choice, rather than just like some producer says this person matters, but actually no one matters besides the 5 people, and we all know who they are. When it comes to making a film that will have an MG. Yeah, I mean, for distribution, you want things to hit at the right time, and I'm hoping Brianna's show and then the rollout hit at the right time in the fall for distribution. But it's sort of like it's out of my hands quite soon. But when you first start, you're gonna find the cast at your level and at your budget, and it's just gonna have to work like that. But just pick the best actor. Pick the best actor.
Yeah, I just to quickly add, distribution is out of your hands as a filmmaker. It just is. Um, like that's something to worry about on the other side of completing it. And in the meantime, like yes, the most exciting available talent to you is like you should absolutely consider. Um, there are many. There are so there. It becomes so specific to the project that ultimately you just want someone that like is going to like pop off the screen. Especially if you're making. There are so many genres now, like especially if you're making a genre film. Um, it's you don't need names to sell it. You don't need names to sell it to like a big distributor if the movie is great, and they're really good in it. People like discoveries, especially if it's younger roles. People really like finding talent that they haven't seen before. So the number one priority is like, do you vibe with them, or are they going to vibe with the parameters of your production? That is a huge question, because if they are willing to kind of give everything for it, um, and you will go to the end of the earth with them, like they will do amazing things in your film.
Yeah, and the white T-shirt there. Yeah, next to the copy.
Yeah, I was wondering where you guys get funding for these films and how you balance the cost of living with making a film that takes like a year, 2 years, 3 years. And also, if you'd be willing to share, I'd be really curious, like, what the budgets of your films were.
Ours was really high for a documentary. Like very early on, like we took the risk, the producer and I took the risk, and we put in our own money to start the project. And then we put together like a 3.5 minute teaser that we sent out, and it kind of caught wildfire. So we ended up like doing calls with so many massive producers and executive producers around the world that had numerous gold statues, and it got into the hands of a guy named John Batzik, who did Searching for Sugarman, recently the Beckham series, Manhunter. So he was really dogged about it, and he got into the hands of Chris Smith, who directed Fire Festival, Jim and Andy, American Movie, and the two of them teamed up, and they gave us our seed funding to kind of continue on, but also with their names attached and their support, it attracted other investors, both private and government, and also the marketplace. So we pre-sold a territory. We got an international sales agent, and it kind of grew from there. So it was sort of done in tranches, and it did take time, and it was it's always slower than you hope it's going to be. But ultimately, we kind of got the money that we needed to finish it, and I got my investment paid back, and I was paid like a fee to kind of continue working. So in answer to your question about living on it, I was paid a fee to be able to make it.
Radar is my first feature, and since film school, I've worked full time like in higher ed. I work at UCLA, and yeah, I mean, we thought we were gonna make the movie for a certain number, but then we could not, based upon kind of we went through our casting process, and it was like you kind of figure out what the movie's worth after that. That's how it worked for us, at least. And so it was strike time, double strike times. It was a weird time. So to be out there, so we kind of revisited, and we're like, what I can say to you is if you want to make a feature, try to raise 100K by yourself, and then that proves you have something, and then have people come in for the rest. That'd be my advice. It seems like a lot of money, and it is, but it's not for a feature. Like I had 35 grand from a grant from SF Film that I didn't get to use from the pandemic that I sat on, and another like 5K grant from Sundance that I sat on, also pandemic. So I had 40 of my own equity. We did a crowdfund. We got some friends and family investments. We then also monetized a tax credit in Missouri, which is 40%. So then once we got our other halves or so to come in, it wasn't like a big daunting ask. But I think like get yourself to like maybe 100K plus a tax credit, and you can probably make your feature. That would be my advice. And keep your job.
Dear Shop Girl is short. Um, it's 14 minutes about, and we shot it in 2 days. And, you know, I think like it was around 40K, which really honestly doesn't cover it all. Like there's so much sweat equity, there's so much time. All the fees of submitting to festivals, going to festivals, that's like all really part of your film budget, you know? And I live in New York. That's, an expensive place. Everything's cost of living is going up everywhere. I would say you've got to be a little lucky, lean into luck.
Yeah, it's I think it's impossible to make an independent film without some form of day job that is itself flexible enough to you could go into production and post production and you can still balance everything. Um, it's not I mean it is like not sustainable on a reputable level. Which is a really like it's a sadness, and it's very much like a product of as you said, our country and where what we value. And it's heartbreaking because there is an inherent level of like some people will be able to do that and some people won't. And it is you would like to hope that talent rises, and like I think in many ways like in at festivals like this and in script competitions like it absolutely can, but it is it takes in the best scenarios it takes forever, and it is a lot of at any budget level for anything that is independent it's begging it's begging for will you be willing to work for this reduced fee compared to how you normally work. Would you be willing to do me this favor? And I think it's really just being my only advice is just really being transparent up front about getting on the same creative page and getting excited, but being transparent about your resources, because the last thing that you want is to lose someone because they were under a different impression of what you were working with, because very few people know how hard it is to do this than the filmmakers do. So transparency, I think, is key.
It is incredibly hard to make a film, and partially that is because of our funding structures in this country. When I was in Europe screening my short, I met Berlin-based filmmakers and Paris-based filmmakers. A lot of them asked me, how are there even filmmakers in America? And I said, well, everyone works really hard. For myself with this short, there was a lot of in-kind donations, but everyone was paid at the bare minimum of an indie rate, right? That they felt comfortable with. In terms of how I raised my funding, I tend to write a lot of grant applications for all my projects. For this short film, I think we applied to 6 or 7 grants and we got 3 of them. So once I had those grants assembled, and which I considered, the beginning of the equity, then I was able to approach individuals that I thought would be a good fit, say, hey, will you complete the funding for us? Will you join the community of this film? And when I'm speaking to people who are potential individual backers, it does give them the confidence when I believe it does help give them confidence in adding their support when these different foundations whose names they recognize have already thrown in their support. And I think of it as who is going to be in the community of the film, because it's not just transactional. It can't just be transactional. At least I don't think it should be. It needs to be relational. It has to be the right choice for the funder and you as the filmmaker. So we're very fortunate with my short that everyone who came on as an individual backer, everyone who supported us as a foundation, you know, really wanted the film to be as we intended, and that was important too. And some of the funders who came on to Somewhere to Be, they were funding arts and culture for the first time. So I would also advise, don't just look at who you've heard of as a funder. Look at who's naturally in your community. Ask around. You know, if you have a friend who has a different world of connections than you, but you trust them, you trust their values, ask them who do you think might be a great producer on this, and share the mission, share the ethos of this film. And when you sit and think about everyone you know, there are going to be people that naturally come up. So
That's great insight. Um, for us, I mean, I'll agree with kind of the number that Nir threw, like 40K for like an independent short film around the 15 to 20 minute mark. And a lot of that for us, we are currently taking a loss on. We did get some in-kind donations as well, and like friends and family supporting. We did a little bit of crowdfunding, and we hope to actually kickstart a new crowdfunding campaign to like get the film actually seen now that we've done the labor of finishing it and getting it premiered. But it's difficult. I mean, I live in Los Angeles as well. It's a very expensive place, and a lot of the time, like what we were able to do for our film was just like how many things that are realistic costs of a film can we sort of fold into what we already have. So a lot of gear and stuff is like mine or friends or things like that. And it was really just about like how can we like use the connections we have to get resources. One of the coolest things about our film is that we were able to film our interview with Sean in the Dr. Phillips Center in one of their auditoriums, because Sean works with them frequently and he has a good relationship with them as far as what they're doing for the arts in this city and things like that. So when we approached them through that lens and Sean made that connection, they were willing to give us 5 hours in one of their auditoriums and a lighting tech and things like that, because they knew the cause, they knew Sean, they knew it was important, and there was trust there. So when you're trying to like find money for your film, also think about like what resources people have that aren't money. Maybe Dr. Phillips couldn't give us $5,000 for that specific at that specific time, but if they were willing to share their space with us and not charge us for it, that shows that they have buy-in and they have care about it and things like that. So yeah, hopefully I find the way to grants and things like that. I'm soaking up a lot of wisdom, everyone else talking about it. But from where you're at, especially for the students here, just like think about other things you need for your film, other resources that people can give you if they're not in a place to give you money.
Well, we are running out of time, so I would love to thank you again for all for being here. Or if you all stick around, I'm sure you'll be out in the lobby outside. So if you have further questions, but yeah, we just have to turn the theater over for the next screening. But again, thank you all. Appreciate you.
Great. Thank you.